Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Good to see you all. The race is about to begin. Now, that could be, for some people, the race to get home and get to sleep as quickly as possible because Santa can't come until everybody's asleep. For others, it could be figuring out the game plan for tomorrow morning, who can get to the tree the fastest to start opening the gifts. But the race I'm curious to watch is going to take place in my neighborhood. And it's to see who's going to be the fastest to get out there and get those Christmas lights down. I know why. I mean, I've talked to people about this because some people put them up so early and start celebrating Christmas so early that by the time they get through tomorrow, they are done. They are sick of Christmas and they can't wait to get it all back in the attic. Now, no one who would come to Christ Church on Christmas Eve would be like that, I know. You come to an Episcopal church, you know that Christmas is a season. It starts on Christmas Day, it runs 12 days, ends on the 5th of January, so we can celebrate the Feast of the Epiphany on January 6th. That's why we have the 12 Days of Christmas Carol. We sing about those 12 days because it's a 12-day season. So I'm sure all of you, if I come and check, you will be sure to have your decorations up until Epiphany, right? Right? Okay. But we'll see how this goes. I am not an Advent Grinch. The church sometimes has to follow good liturgical practices during the season of Advent, and we don't use red in the church until Christmas Eve. We do our greens and our sticks and a few white flowers, maybe a few pink flowers. On the Sunday, we light the pink candle on the Advent wreath. But we tone it down. We keep it, Christmas waits. Which is why it was interesting we had a guest last week on Wednesday night. I don't think many of you were there, but some of you were. We ended our Wednesday night series where we gather for dinner every Wednesday. We have a couple of chefs, real chefs, who make food from scratch for us every Wednesday. Y'all are welcome when we start back up to join us. And then we have a program. Well, for the last one of this season, we wanted to have Christmas bingo. But you can't have Christmas bingo in Advent when you're an Episcopalian. So we had not quite Christmas bingo. Well, we had a visit from Advent Man while we played bingo. I don't know how many of you have ever met Advent Man, but Advent Man is an interesting person. He's a little bit of a cross between John the Baptist, a Smurf, and a caveman. He had a blue unitard on with a big blue shock of hair that I imagine would have looked like John the Baptist if he had blue hair, and an animal skin tunic. And Advent Man was there to make us aware that we didn't want to rush to Christmas too quickly. Advent Man was not pleased that we had red ribbons on our chandeliers from celebrating St. Nicholas on his feast day earlier in the month. Thank goodness no one had a Christmas sweater on, because I don't know what would have happened. There was a Grinch sweater, but that was okay because the Grinch and Advent Man are friends, apparently. And it was a good reminder not to rush to get to Christmas too fast, but to let it be what it is, to inaugurate a season and a way of thinking and a way of knowing what God is up to. It is not something to rush through and get done with. And we have to navigate Advent with a culture that can't wait to celebrate Christmas. It's usually starting to show up even before Halloween, and it's all in once Halloween is past. And I'm one of those people. I like to listen to Christmas music in the month of December. Our Christmas tree went up on Thanksgiving evening because Eva wanted to be there so we could put it up as a family while Eva was home on Christmas break. That's fine. It'll still be up till Epiphany. And I have traditions that I do, like there's a couple of movies I try to watch every year. One I watch almost every single year. The other one I get to as often as I can. And I like other movies. Like I like Elf, I like Die Hard, but they're not the ones I watch every year. The two I watch all the time are It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart and the 1984 version of A Christmas Carol with George C. Scott playing Ebenezer Scrooge. And I love watching those movies because they allow us to understand the practical side of Christmas. So tonight we can talk about the doctrine of incarnation, which we will for a moment, but for most of us it's not the doctrine in the church's teaching about what happens tonight, it's what it means for us. How does it change our lives? How does it shape the world? That's what matters to us. And if we're looking for examples of what that can look like in practice, those two films are a great place to start. I'll come back to those. I do want to talk about the doctrine of the Incarnation because it's important. Incarnation is the word we give for what we celebrate tonight, that God took on human flesh and dwelt among us. One of the ways we talk about that is Jesus, Emmanuel. And we're told in Scripture, Emmanuel means God with us. That God put on human clothing and came down and moved in next door. This is a really important part of Christianity for us because it inaugurates all of God's saving work from this point forward. The rest of the gospel, the rest of the New Testament, the last 2,000 years of the church started with this birth that we celebrate tonight. As we will pray at the end of our Eucharist tonight, we are reminded of the prodigal father who runs out to meet his son and brings him home rather than waiting for him to come. The Incarnation is God's recognition that we couldn't figure it out. We had trouble communicating with God, understanding God, following God's instructions, trusting in God's promises, and God gave up and said, you know what? I'm coming down there. And that's who Jesus is for us. The person that allows us to know God best, and in human form allowed God to understand God's creation just a little bit better. And I suspect that after Jesus walked the earth, God was a little less frustrated with us as a result, which may be why Hebrew Scripture God and New Testament God sometimes sounds a little bit different, because God learned a little bit along the way as well. So it's an important thing that we have tonight. And I don't want us to skip to Christmas really fast, and I don't want us to be the Christians who skip immediately to Holy Week. I've probably mentioned it before. One of those people with lights in our neighborhood loves to have their Christmas cross on their palm tree. And I get it. You don't get the cross without Christmas and the birth of Jesus, but I don't want to go there yet. I don't want us to skip to that. That seems very transactional. And if God wants to be transactional and check a box or fulfill something, God didn't need the 30-odd years of Jesus' life. We don't need all the stories in the Gospels. We don't need the teaching and the parables and the healing and the casting out of demons and the controversy and the trial and the crucifixion. God didn't need all of that. But there was a reason for it. And so I don't want us to rush to the cross on the palm tree. I want us not to rush through Christmas, but to recognize the gift of this night and why it matters. And it matters because it sets off all the things between this incarnation, God with us, and the resurrection and ascension of Christ that we hold on to and proclaim to this day. And that's where these movies come in. Because the writers of these stories, Charles Dickens and whoever it was who wrote It's a Wonderful Life, they're not espousing direct Christian theology, and yet their stories are infused with it at the same time. And what they're doing in their storytelling is capturing the essence of what Jesus is up to in that in-between time that some of us may want to just rush through and forget about. And it's really important. And it's why we have the Incarnation. God didn't just want to check a box. God wanted to teach us something, for us to hear something and learn something and meet God. The God who was out of touch ended up reaching out and touching us. And that matters. Both of these movies that I put together finally this year are essentially going at it the same way from different angles. They get you to the same point with the same question, but with two different roads to get there. Both movies are answering a question. What if? What if? So in It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, the hero, his question is essentially, what if I hadn't been born? He says he wishes he hadn't been born, and his guardian angel says, I'm going to prove it to you. For those of you who don't know, and I know there's a few who probably haven't seen it yet, I know one of them sitting over there, and I've sworn I will get him to watch it. George Bailey, the hero of the story, is frustrated because he spends his whole life serving others. He gives up his dreams, he gives up the hope of wealth and adventure to stay in his hometown and to serve in the family business, which is a building and loan, to make sure that people can build houses and have a life and not be beholden to bankers and people who really want to take advantage however they can. That's not all bankers. It's the banker in It's a Wonderful Life. Don't worry, bankers who are here. And long movie short, at the end of the day, George is frustrated when things go south because they lose some money, and he realizes he's probably going to go to jail. And in his mind, he's thinking, well, why did I do all this for my whole life if I'm just going to go to jail in the end? And realizes he's worth more to his family dead than alive, so that they don't have to be in debt or suffer along with him. And the answer to what if is how this guardian angel Clarence shows him that his life has mattered a great deal, and it has been a wonderful life. So they get a chance to glimpse what George's family and friends and town will be like if he had not been born. So his little brother dies when he went through the water in the freezing pond and isn't there to save all these soldiers in World War II that ultimately got him a medal. He's not there to stand up to the bullies in town, and the town is taken over and becomes a terrible place where no one can really get ahead or own a nice home and all those kinds of things. All the people that he's touched in his life have this miserable existence in some cases because he's not there to be their friend or to watch over them or to care for him. And he gets it finally. He understands that life wasn't wasted, that what seemed like a small world that was boring to him was incredibly important to more people than he realized. And one of the last lines in the movie is when his brother raises a toast to his brother, "My big brother George Bailey, the richest man in town." We realize rich isn't always what we think of it in this world. There's a difference between being wealthy and being rich, particularly from God's perspective. And so the answer to what if I hadn't been here and made all the differences in the world is not a very pretty answer. In A Christmas Carol, the question is what if, but what if I don't change my ways? And what if I don't understand and embody the message of Christmas? And I think we all know the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, and he has the visit from the three spirits of Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future. He gets to see that he's made some choices that have made his life miserable, that he's chosen to be miserable in his own money and his own success, that there's a lot of suffering around him that he seems immune to and certainly hasn't noticed until he realizes that the man he works for can't afford much of a Christmas dinner, and that his son is going to die because they can't afford treatment. And maybe all those people that he thought were just sucking up resources that are poor and imprisoned and in orphanages really do need something he has to offer. The thing that really gets his attention is that he realizes from watching with the ghost of Christmas future, when he dies, no one will care. His life will not have made a difference. He will be mocked. Whatever it was he amassed in this world didn't do anything, and it ends up being frittered away or stolen. And he suddenly puts all the pieces together and understands the Christmas that his nephew had tried to talk to him about. When he told his nephew to go away, and he said, "You keep Christmas your way, and I'll keep it mine." His nephew says, "You don't keep Christmas." He says, "Fine, then let me leave it alone." By the time we see Scrooge on Christmas Day and understanding Christmas, the narrator, Charles Dickens, comes in with his story and says, Scrooge understood Christmas. He lived it every day, and they said if any man knew how to keep Christmas, it was Ebenezer Scrooge. And he turned his life around. And the question, what if I don't understand Christmas, is again a terrible answer, a terrible outcome. And the world is better because he gets that answer. And he turns to embracing Christmas. A lot of what Jesus has to say between what we celebrate tonight and what we celebrate on Easter. It's an awful lot about the way we get along with each other and the way we care for the world around us, the way that we live into those commandments that we remind ourselves of in all of our Sunday liturgies. Love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's not transactional. That's relational. That's relational for us on this earth, and it's relational with our God who sets it all in motion and calls out to us. And there's a reminder here for us in the stories of George Bailey and Ebenezer Scrooge to see what a difference it makes when we can live that out in our lives, in our communities, in our families, in our workplaces, in our schools, and all the places that we interact with God's children. And sometimes it might wake us up to the fact that we're leaving something on the table, when we could make a great difference that we're not making because we're too busy paying attention to other things. I don't want us to rush through this night and put the stuff back in the attic as soon as we can because, frankly, we're sick of Christmas. The Incarnation, the reality of Emmanuel, God with us, is a daily gift to be carried in our hearts, to be manifest in our lives. It's a matter of recognizing that God is the giver of so many good gifts. And it's okay that we set up trees in the beginning of the month and we sing carols and we watch the movies, but don't get sick of what Christmas is truly about. Reflect on it, ponder it on our hearts, spread the good news like the shepherds did tonight of what you hear and see and know to be true about God in your lives. Because that's what the world needs. That's the light in the darkness that all this is about. I pray that we could be people who could understand that being wealthy isn't important, but being rich very much is. And the richness that comes from how we live our lives. And that when our day comes and people speak about us, maybe we'll be among those who they say, if anybody knew how to keep Christmas every day, it was them.